Welcome back, and thank you for joining me in today. I know life is always calling us to do something, so it's nice if you took a break, and hopefully, this will give you some time to refresh and get encouraged before you get called to go into four different directions. Today, I was thinking about talking about the question we seem to ask ourselves: how did I get here? We have visions and plans of what we want or wanted, depending on your age, in our life. And as we start to think about our choices and what led us from one stage to another, it's amazing how fast time passes. And in retrospect, it's so easy to pinpoint a pivotal step that turns up that we land up being farther than we ever thought we could ever go in life, or else it stops us in our tracks. And it's amazing. Time just has a way of, and something that was so small at one point in time of our life of a decision land up being a major decision. The Bible is full of people whose lives had major effects because of one situation or string of choices that they had made or desires. When we're young, we are not even aware of the dangers or the pitfalls ahead of us. We believe we can overcome and beat anything that comes our way. When we're 25 years old, we are invincible. Nobody knows more than we do. We know it all. Old people don't know anything. And we're going to out to prove the world. We're going to show the world what we can do. As you get to my age of 75 almost, you sit back and you go, oh my goodness, what I thought I knew. I always say now, what I thought I knew in my 20s, I don't even know that. And I don't even care to know stuff anymore because you just keep learning and learning and learning. I think it was one of the best times in our life. We have a great attitude. It gets us moving out into life and experiencing things we never thought we could do because we're not afraid. You just go out. It's over time when you start failing at stuff that you stop dreaming dreams because you think, oh, I've done that before and that's not going to work. So being youthful and having that attitude that you can accomplish anything, I think it's a great, great place to be in life. And I think it's also an attitude God wants us to always keep, not with the pride behind it, but just to have that we can overcome anything. And we can reach it gets us moving out into areas and opportunities that we never even dreamed possible, or it can get us in situations that we wish we had never been in. So having that attitude of anything it can go both ways for us. And as I was pondering when I was going to put the study together the other day, I came across, I didn't know how to get this started because I didn't want to use my own personal life or people's life. So I went to the Bible and Joseph. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this story of Joseph, but he had a lot of adversity in his life and he had a big vision for his life. So he's the one I'm going to base this study on today. And I know that all of us will be able to see ourselves in his life. And I know over the years, when I did study the Bible, that Joseph's life was one I could relate to, especially as years went on. When I was 20, I had no idea what I was going to encounter from 30 to 50. But when I was 20, his story intrigued me. And it's a long story in the Bible. It's in the first book of the Bible. It's Genesis 37 through 50, a lot of chapters. That's a lot of chapters. It's 13 chapters. And you read about his life from the age that he was 17 until he died at 110. So 13 chapters spans that much time. God had a huge purpose for him, and it wasn't anything that I'm sure he had imagined. He had a dream at 17, and if you read in Genesis 37, verses 5 through 8, and he told his brothers about the dream that he had, even though he didn't understand it totally. But he did know enough that his brothers would bow down to him. And so he told his brothers that, and he was the youngest of his brothers. And his dad, Jacob, really loved him most of all. So they were not too happy about this dream that he had had. And it made them even be more angry at him because they were already envious of him because his dad loved him the most. But now they were angry at him for saying this. And then later on, a few verses later, he had another dream. And remember, he was only 17, so he's excited about these dreams. And he told his father, and Oh, okay, and he left. I already told y'all that. So then he had another dream, and when he had the other dream in verses 9, he told his brothers and his dad about the dream he had this time, and they all stepped back from him when he said it, because you got to remember, this was after the first dream. Because the first time they were going to bow down to him, but this time now the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to him. And in verse 10, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come and bow down to the earth before you?" And his brothers envied him even more, but his father kept the matter in his mind. Even though Jacob did not like that dream, he never really forgot what Joseph had told him. But he did not like the dream, and his brothers really didn't like it. And I've said all this to give you the backstory so that you can see how youth and our dreams or goals can be sometimes totally different than what we had envisioned. And after he had those dreams, needless to say, his brothers turned against him totally. And one day, while he was home because he was the youngest, his older brothers were out because his dad, Jacob, had a lot of cattle and sheep. And he told his brother Joseph, he told his son Joseph to go out and see how your brothers are doing. I want to know how they're doing with the flocks out where they're out in Shechem. So in Shechem was quite a ways. I don't know where, I don't know how far it was, but let's say I live in Texas, and let's say it says go to Dallas. Dallas is like 3 hour road trip, but maybe he had to walk 3 hours to get to Shechem. I don't know, but it was quite a distance. So Joseph, being the son that he was, he loved his father. He went out to go find his brothers, but they weren't there. When he got to Shechem, they weren't there. So he looked for them and he asked a man about them because people knew who they were. And he said, "Oh, they moved down to a city called Dodom." I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Dodom is what I'm going to call it. So Joseph went to find them. And when he got to verse 18 through 28, they saw him coming at a distance. His brothers saw him coming at a distance, and they conspired to kill him. They didn't kill him, though. They threw him in a pit to die. But as they were eating lunch, mind you, they threw their brother into a pit. They're eating lunch. There was a convoy of Ishmaelites on the road farther away. They saw the Ishmaelites, so they decided to sell him for 20 shekels of silver, and he was taken to Egypt as a slave. Now, can you imagine this dream of his brothers bowing down to him, and all of a sudden now Joseph's life is just totally in disarray. His brothers also took the coat that Jacob had made him. There's a play, actually, it's a coat of many colors. His dad made him a beautiful coat, and his brothers were jealous, and they hated him at that point in time anyway. But they took the coat and they covered it with blood, and then they took it back to their father, and they go, "Is this the coat you made for Joseph?" And he saw all the blood on it. He goes, "He must have been killed by a wild beast." Talk about jealousy and family dysfunctions. I mean, I think Jacob was devastated. Joseph was his favorite son. He sent him out to see how his brothers were doing, and all of a sudden now he's dead. And he brought his coat, and his father never recovered from that. I mean, he just never, Joseph was his favorite son. This story is one of the reasons that I loved the Bible when I was first reading the Bible, even though I didn't truly understand it at the time. But it always proved to me that it was truthful. It tells the good, the bad, and the ugly side of people in life. If we were to write our own story, I'm sure there are many situations or things we thought or did that we would leave out because it would reveal our heart and our motives and how evil we are within ourselves. We can read this about his brothers, but we all have that tendency in us. We see something, we get mad at our own brothers and sisters or our bosses. We all have those tendencies. We usually don't act upon them, but sometimes we do. But God leaves all of this in the story so that we can relate like real people do to people. We live in a world now that there's a facade. Everything's happy. We do our little Facebook pictures, our Instagram, smiling, and that's not life. Nobody's life is picture perfect, happy all the time. Everybody is the same. We all have the same issues going on in life. We would leave him out. But God tells us the whole story so that we can relate to things that we have done or have had done to us that we've had to overcome from other people. And how else can you learn something, and how can you relate to a story? That's why biographies are usually such popular movies, because they show you somebody's life, the adversity, and how they overcame it. And that's the whole thing the Bible is. The Bible is just a book of adversity from the beginning of time till the end. It's the enemy, warfare, and how Satan tries to destroy people, and the manners in which he does, and how God can overcome it if you go to him. It's life. Life is full of adversity and people's being mean to each other. It's sad. You can look in our world where we are today, the hate and the division. It's sad. But God tells us the whole story. And so from that day on, Joseph lived, once his brothers did what he did to him, in a foreign land. He lost his family, the love of his father. He was very close to his father. He never thought he would see any of them again. And I'm sure he was very sad, hurt, because of their betrayal and how they treated him. I mean, can you imagine at 17? Who knows? He might have been 18 at this time, or 19. Who knows? Doesn't say. But the fact of the matter is, he was very young. And he left a home just to go see his brothers, and now his entire life is like, are you kidding me? I don't know if any of you have ever had the rug pulled out from underneath you. It's happened to me more than once. And I mean, it is not a happy place to be. But God had a purpose for that betrayal and the pain. Joseph would learn through his captivity of all the years before, as you read the story, he learned the Egyptians' way of life. He learned how their government ran. He became a leader. He learned how to become a leader. He learned how to organize things. He grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, and his dreams that he had when he was younger that put him into slavery. Later, he had the ability to interpret those dreams, and the Lord used those to help Joseph get into a good position. So his dreams brought him to a bad position as well as a good position. And in the interim, from 17 till he got to the better place, was many, many decades. Joseph was sold to Potiphar after the Ishmaelites took him to, he bought him. They went to Egypt, and Potiphar is the one who bought him, and he sold him to Pharaoh. But the Lord was with Joseph and made all he did to prosper in his hand. So no matter what happened, what his brothers did to him, no matter where Joseph landed up with his feet, he always succeeded. And the reason he succeeded is because God was always with him, and people saw it. And when you read the story about Joseph, like I said, in those verses 39, I forgot what I said, it was verses 39 to 50, I believe. Anyway, you'll have the notes. It's 13 chapters. If you read the entirety, it's the most interesting read you'll ever read, and you'll find yourself in it. I would recommend highlighting when you see things that you did or things that have been done to you. You'd be amazed. But throughout, you'll read it more than once that Joseph, the Lord was with Joseph and made everything he did prosper. When you read about Joseph, you'll also notice that the statement over time, Pharaoh's wife, applied to Joseph. And while he was in the palace, when he was bought and Pharaoh took him, his wife, he was a very good looking man, I believe, and he was built well. He was young and he was good looking. And Pharaoh's wife, she had it in with him. She really wanted him. So she would entice him. And for months, he would not go with her enticements. I'm sure he wanted to. It doesn't ever say that, but I mean, he's a man, she was a woman, and anyway, he wouldn't do it. And one day she was there in the palace alone, and she enticed him into her room, and he wouldn't, and he ran from her, and she grabbed his coat or cloak, whatever he had on in the thing, and she went to her husband, and she said he tried to rape her. And Pharaoh really liked Joseph. But when his wife said that she raped him, he was trying to rape her, he had to do what he had to do. So he threw Joseph in prison. And I'm sure it wasn't the highlight of his day, but he had to do it because it was his wife said it. So he landed up in prison for a long while. And while he was in prison, the commander of the prison put him in charge of the prison because the Spirit of the Lord was with him. And no matter what he did, you could trust him, and he just knew how to organize things. So he became the head of the prison. And while he was doing that, two of the Pharaoh's servants, one was a butler and one was a baker, had dreams, and the dreams really bothered them. And so when they were talking about their dream, Joseph could interpret those dreams. So he did. And he told the one that one was going to be dead, one was going to die, and the other one that he would be released. And that's exactly what happened. They were both released. One was killed, and the other one went back to his work, which was the butler. And when they were released, Joseph told them back years ago, back then when he told them, he goes, please remind Pharaoh I'm in here and get me out of here, because he wanted to get out of the prison. But like all of us, well, you did something for me, forget you. And they went on, and the butler never did tell Pharaoh about Joseph. But years later, I'm getting ahead of myself. I have to keep myself on my notes. I got to catch up with my notes now. So in verse 41, during the time that he was in jail, Pharaoh had a dream. And the butler that had gotten out remembered Joseph interpreted one of his dreams, because Pharaoh called all of his musicians in Egypt to interpret the dream. He had a dream that was very vivid to him, and he wanted to know what it meant, but nobody could interpret it for him. So now the butler says, oh, I know someone that can do that for you. Joseph in prison, he knows how to interpret dreams. So Pharaoh called him from the prison to come in front of him to tell him the interpretation of the dream. And Joseph did. And Joseph said, I can't interpret it, but God can interpret it for you. And he told him that there's going to be 7 years of plenty, which means the land is going to be full and fruitful, and you're going to have a lot of grain. But after the 7 years of plenty, you're going to have 7 years of famine. He goes, so you better do what you need to do in these next 7 years so that you're ready for the famine. And as when he was talking in verses 38 and 40, Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is on? So he put Joseph over his entire jurisdiction of Egypt. Only he would be ahead of Joseph. So Joseph had full reign, and he controlled all of Egypt. That's how much Pharaoh trusted him. And he wanted him to get the 7 years of plenty and store it up so that there would be food for the next following 7 years. And Joseph was well the man for that job. And that's where God wanted him to be. I would like to stop here for a moment to say that when you hear people say that your life is ruined, or that you're never going to overcome the adversity you've been on, or you've made too many mistakes, you're never going to amount to anything, don't believe it. Because this story right here, he was in prison for years for something he didn't even do. And God took him out at the right time to do what he was planned to do. In this story alone, and there's many more in the Bible like it, shows us that nothing that happens or comes into our life cannot be used to elevate you to a position that you have had no idea you would ever hold. And I don't mean a position necessarily in business. Positions are any place that you can help somebody and make somebody's life a little bit better. That's God's success. Success is not monetary. Our society, everything based on money. God's society, it's based on your moral values, your heart, and how you help people. And that's true success to God. Money, God owns it all. Money and gold. I mean, the streets of silver, or the streets of heaven, are paved in gold. We have such high value of materialistic things. Not to say they're not nice. I'm not denigrating that. But the fact of the matter is, we hold such value to them, where in In heaven, you're walking on streets of gold. So the value of gold has nothing in heaven. It's who you are as a person. And that is what God's trying to teach us through adversity. And Joseph was very successful. Did he have a lot of money? No. But he was very successful. No matter where he stepped in, God elevated him to the highest level. God will never waste your pain or your adversity. He promises us in the Bible in Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for good to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose. There is, in the Bible, there's hundreds of promises, and a lot of them are conditional. There's very few that are unconditional promise. Salvation is an unconditional promise. If you accept Christ and believe that he died on the cross and resurrected, and you trust him and you ask him into your heart, that is an unconditional promise. You will be saved. There's not very many unconditional promises. Just like this one says here, we know that all things work together for good. So if you know that everything you're going through is going to be worked for good, it helps you not be so angry because you know, well, God, what am I going to learn through this lesson? And you're going to learn something. You're going to glean something off of your pain, and it's going to help somebody else along down the road in your life. Like me right now. What I do here, I can't believe this is my 26th lesson that I've done. This is what God put me through all of my life to this. And here I am at 74 years old, talking to my camera in a room, helping other people hopefully have the belief that God can help you and pull you out of that pit. Like you read in David in the Psalms, how many times he says, I'm in a pit so deep and dark. How can I get out of here? God can do it for us. And I am living proof that he can. And I wonder why. Why did you let me? Why are you letting me do this? Because I know firsthand how painful life can be and how hard it is to get out of one spot to get up to the next one. Is it easy? No. Is it humanly possible? No. But with God, it is, because he gives us the strength, the courage, and the ability to not stop, because he gives you something inside of you. You got to keep going, because if you quit, who wins? Satan. And at 74 years old, trust me, he's tried to take me out many, many times. And at 74, I'm not going to let him win. Am I the top person on Satan's greatest? Does he like me? No. I'm probably on the top 10 list of, not that top, I'm probably in the top 1,000. There's so many people higher than, but he hates anybody that's trying to overcome his evil through God's good. And he's relentless. He doesn't leave you alone. Like it tells you, your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. 1 Peter 5:8. It's not in our notes here, but that's what Satan does. He's just out to destroy anything of God's that's good. And I got off track. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'll bet that Joseph thought about those dreams that he had when he was 17, thinking he was going to be in a higher position than his brothers and family. He never dreamed that his life was going to go from bad to worse. Here he was abandoned by his brothers, sold as a slave, thrown in prison, forgotten about Pharaoh until Pharaoh needed something. Then in a matter of a few seconds, he was taken from prison, and he was like the vice president of Egypt in a New York minute. That's how fast it happened. Joseph was probably thinking, what in the world has happened here? I mean, how did I get here? And it's not one little thing that got him there. It was a string and years of things going on in life, and all of a sudden he's where he's at. And that's how we are. I mean, I know for myself, I wanted to be a cop when I was in high school. I did. I wanted to be a cop. And then I found out I couldn't be a cop because you had to be 5. I had the height, but I didn't have the weight. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do? I didn't have any idea what I was going to do when I was graduated out of high school. And I ended up becoming an accountant. I took it in school, but that was not even on my radar to be an accountant. But that's what I did, and God blessed it, and I raised my daughter in an independent bookkeeping company. I mean, for 30 some years until I moved when I was almost 70, I was 69 years old. I worked from 38 to 69 as a bookkeeper, an accountant in small businesses. I mean, that wasn't even on my radar. When I sit back now and think 30 some years that God kept me. She went to a private school, vacations. I think God allowed me to do all that. I can't even believe I accomplished that. Plus, doing what I'm doing right here back then. I mean, it's just amazing when you sit back in retrospect of what your life and how God, you can see his footprint with you all the time. He had to wonder, how in the world did I get here? So I hope this is encouraging you and hopefully help build you back some courage and hope that God with you can overcome anything if you believe and trust in his son and the promises that we have throughout the Bible. These promises in these Joseph's life, my life, anybody's life that has overcome adversity, that could be you. I don't care where you're at. You could be in a prison cell right now. You could be on a job that you hate. You could be a single parent, and I know how hard that is. I was one. I mean, there's so many things that come against us, and we think, how am I going to get through this, Lord? This is the hardest. I'm never going to get out of this mess. I'm never going to get out of debt. Oh, my goodness. You'd be surprised. While commanding and organizing the food supply for the coming famine, Joseph married, and he had 2 sons on top of that. That's all the things that Joseph had after his brothers got rid of him. He went through a metamorphosis of life. He lost things. He got married. He was he was almost like a king. I mean, look at all the things that he gleaned. Had he just been with his dad, he would have never went through all that stuff. So God had a plan for his life. 7 years, the 7 years of the good harvest ended, like the dream Pharaoh had, and the famine came. And in verse 55, we read, the Egyptians cried out to Pharaoh, but he told them, go to Joseph, and whatever he says to you, do it. So Pharaoh washed his hands of it all. He goes, you go to Joseph. He knows what's going on. The famine was very, very severe, and all the lands around Egypt were in need of food also. Now, this is where the story starts to pick up and becomes very good, where God takes care of everything. And in Genesis 42 through 50, those are the verses now, those are the chapters, actually, of Joseph's older life, after he became the second in command in the famine. Joseph's father sent his brothers to Egypt to buy grain because he heard there was grain in Egypt. So they all went except for his youngest brother, Benjamin. And when they came to Joseph, Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them. But they had no idea they were standing before their brother Joseph. He remembered his dream, and he said to them in verse 9, you are spies. So now Joseph, he's in the position he could take advantage now. He could be mean to his brothers. He could put them in prison. He could do anything he wanted with his brothers. But what he did, he started playing with them, toyed with them. Because he knew who they were, but they didn't know who he was. And he says, oh, you're spies. And he began playing with them, and he read, and as you read on, he sent his brothers back to Canaan to get their younger brother. In retrospect, his brothers probably wondered, how does he know we have a younger brother? But he knew that his brother Benjamin wasn't there, so he wanted to see his younger brother. And his dad didn't send his younger brother because after what happened to Joseph, he didn't want to lose his other son that he loved that was young. So his brothers went back and they went to get Benjamin, and they did bring him back. And then if you read the story, I'm not going to go through it all, but he did a lot of stuff to his brothers. But eventually he went to Pharaoh. He says, my dad is in Canaan, and I want my dad to come back here. So Jacob was able to come to Egypt. They got all the caravan brought him, and he had the first class ticket to come into Egypt. And he lived a great life, and he was able to reunite. Can you imagine? After all those years thinking his son Joseph was dead, he is alive and ahead of the entire movement for food in Egypt. I mean, Jacob was probably just in awe that he was able to see his son was alive. And can you imagine what he thought about his sons that he knew killed him? I mean, a lot happened in these latter parts, but God, like in the Bible, it says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. You don't have to do nothing. God will orchestrate things in life that the truth will come out somehow. And you'll come out with a happier face than the sadness of the greed and the lies and the jealousy and trying to get back at people. Joseph never tried to get back at his brothers. But oh, what happened to his brothers and his father, how happy at the end of it all. He was reunited with his father, and his father was able to bless his two sons before he died. And that's in chapter 48, verses 9 through 22. And then in Genesis 50, now we're at the very end, Joseph is Joseph lived to be 110. But after his father died, the brothers were afraid of what Joseph was going to repay them for what they had done to him years ago. So here guilt comes back now. They know what they did to his brother. His dad's dead. Now he's probably going to retaliate against us. So they lied again. They came up with a story. It's like they came up with a story that Joseph was killed by a beast. And this time they came to Joseph and said, our father said to us before he died, to tell Joseph, I beg you to forgive the trespasses of your brothers and their sin, for they did do evil against you. They lied to Joseph what Jacob said to them, when Joseph knows his dad didn't say that to them. And it really hurt him and it angered him to think that his brothers still were liars and they had never changed. They never changed from the time they sold him as a slave till now in front of him. Who knows? Joseph had to be 100, I would say, at this stage in life. And then in verses 18 and 19, they fell down before him and said, we are your servants. And verse 19, Joseph said, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? So he was trying to say, yeah, you did wrong, but in my God, I can't make you do anything to you for what you've done to me. I'm not in the place of God. But his brothers had to realize when they bowed down to him, face to the ground, that they were bowing down to him like his dream was when he was 17. And then in verse 20, this is a very infamous saying in the Bible of what Joseph said. And you might have heard this before, I don't know. But this is the main thing. This is the verse for Joseph saying, like his mantra. What you caught as for you, you meant evil against me. But my God meant it for good, in order to bring about as it is this day to save many people's lives. So their brothers, they were used to get Joseph into Egypt, just like Judas was used to have Christ crucified. God has to use people to get his whatever done. People, we live in this world, and people are the one that God uses, just like Satan uses people for evil. God uses us to minister his word, just like the 12 apostles, the 11 apostles, they went out and proclaimed the gospel. And here we are 2,500 years later talking about what those 12 men saw and lived with Jesus for those 3 years. It's just an ongoing story. Just like when Satan fell from heaven, he took a third of the angels with him. And we have demonic activity and evil in this world. It's just people are used by both sides. And it's what side you choose to live on. In this story, we can all find ourselves somewhere, somehow. But it teaches us that nothing can come into our lives that God hasn't allowed. And with that being said, he will also use it to build us, strengthen us, and put us in the place that he had planned for us all along. Yes, we can cause our own pain at times. We can make wrong choices. Yet God is the one who knows everything, and he is loving and good. And his promises and plans are the best that you could ever have in this life. He loves us, and he wants the best for us, no matter who or where we are. And in the book of Revelation, I'm going to end on this verse. In Revelation 3, verse 20, Jesus is standing at the door, and he says, I am knocking. And if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come to him and dine with him, and he with me. So all of this story is because God was with Joseph and God's hand was on his life. And God is always knocking at the door, like I was saying earlier. When things in your life happen and you wonder, how did I ever get out of there? Like if the car almost hits you and somehow it swerves and it doesn't hit you. All of those are little signs that God's protection is on your life. And hopefully you will look at it and realize, boy, that was a close call. God really doesn't, it wasn't my time to go. A lot of us will say, boy, it wasn't my time. No, it wasn't, because God wants you to have, he wants you to come to know him, and he wants to help you in your life. And I hope, it is my greatest prayer, that this lesson just strikes your heart and your mind and you really think about it. I hope a seed is planted somewhere. And as you go through your days, you realize, you know what? I'm going to give God a try. I'm going to see if this can work, and get on the side of God and let him help you become all that you can be, because you will be amazed of where you can land up, no matter what's happened to you, be it good or bad in your life, what's happened to you. I mean, God can take good and elevate it to even higher. And if things have been bad and you feel downtrodden and shameful, like I did for so many years, God can just turn that around for you. Is it easy? I'm not going to say it's an easy road to travel, but it is the only road that will ever get you out from where you're at. And I hope that this has encouraged you to some level with that. And until the next time, I'll let you go. And as I always say, the last page of this study, if you can, all the notes, all the verses that I have said are on this page that you can go back and look at them for yourself. And until we meet again, God bless, and we'll talk again.